Week 15 was the most anticipated week of the NFL season. So the question is, did it live up to the hype? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another BLV NFL reaction, review, and recap. This is the video where I break down each and every NFL game and give you my thoughts from what I saw on Sunday. I don't see everything, but I see most things, and I give you my breakdown of each and every NFL game. Week 15, a great week for football fans. A lot of highly anticipated games, playoff-like matchups and atmosphere. So let's dive in. Spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL reactions every single week. Let me know in the comments your opinion on Week 15. What was your biggest headline, your biggest takeaway? Obviously, Lions-Bills was the game of the day, but there were so many other games to look forward to. The Texans and the Dolphins, the Seahawks and the Packers, the Eagles and the Steelers, the Chargers and the Bucks. So many games. Let's begin with Sunday Night Football, because that's what I just watched. The Packers bullied the Seahawks 30-13. It's safe to say that the Green Bay Packers packed them up and shipped them out. 30-13, man. My goodness. I thought this game was going to be close. I even thought this game was going to be a potential upset for Seattle. So my dumbass sitting here teasing the Seattle Seahawks to 9, thinking, easy. Well, they maybe could have covered at one point in this game if Geno Smith did not get hurt. But of course he did get hurt. And guys, as I do every week, the bets. Best bets on the channel. I think we're sitting at 2 and 3 going into Monday. Couple bad breaks. We'll break that down. But Atlanta. We have Atlanta, I think, -4.5 is what I gave it out at. It's now at 5.5. So hopefully Atlanta can cover. We can get to 500. On Patreon, brutal week. Brutal week on Patreon. We had a brutal week. There was some good, but man, far more bad, and a lot of bad breaks. I mean, a lot. We'll break that down in this video, and you'll see my emotion when it pops up, because I want to be real, right? Like, I don't claim to be a professional gambler. I'm certainly not a professional gambler, but what I am is somebody that follows the NFL pretty closely, as you can tell, and I cover all 32 NFL teams. So people do support me on Patreon, and they get my picks as a service. And so I got to live up to that. And this week it was real rough, okay? So I admit to that, to all the patrons out there, the YouTube members out there. So I got to be better moving forward. So we're going to try to analyze what I got right, what I got wrong, and try to talk about why it was a rough week betting. But it was also a pretty interesting week to watch. Now, that being said, let's begin with Sunday Night Football. And like I said, I teased Seattle, expecting it to be close, if not a Seattle upset. Now, I will say the game at one point was 23-13 Packers. And the Seahawks got the ball back near their own 40-yard line with a chance to make it a one-score game with about 5 minutes left. They just got a 4th down stop. And if they go down there and they even kick a field goal, I probably cover the teaser at the end of the day. But instead, Sam Howell throws an interception. And honestly, I don't even know if I can really get mad, because I didn't even think Sam Howell would be the quarterback, right? Geno Smith gets hurt. That was a big part of this game in the late stages. Geno was 15 for 19 on the day, 149, and an interception in the end zone. That's also part of it to why they didn't cover the teaser, because he threw an interception in the red zone again. This guy throws an interception in the end zone like every second game. I don't even think I'm exaggerating. Like every second game. It should be a part of the handicap at this point. He's just going to throw the ball to the other team once he gets there. But this game was all about, to me, the beginning, the start. The Packers are such an incredible starting team. They're so good in the first quarter. Like, this is something I've recognized with Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur, and really even dating back to Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. I think this might just be a Matt LaFleur thing, but the Packers are incredible in the first half. Like, truly great. Last year, they did have a few comebacks, I remember, but a lot of their success down the stretch was just how incredible they would jump out on teams, and teams would have to fight back and come back. In this game, it was similar. Seattle did fight back to a certain degree, and they made their adjustments at halftime, but the Packers caught them sleeping early in the game, and that's on the road in Seattle on Sunday Night Football. You would expect the team to come out with the energy, the passion, the hunger, the toughness, the grit, to be the home team that needs to win. Like, the Packers, sure. Like, could they win? Yeah, sure, that would help them. But does it, like, really put them over the top for the playoff conversation? Not really. I mean, what? At worst, as I click my iPhone camera by mistake for 1 second, at worst, bro, they're the 6th seed. Like, at worst. So, 21 first downs for Green Bay, 14 first downs for Seattle, 5 for 12 on third down for Green Bay, 4 for 13 on third down. Neither team was overly successful. And, you know, I was watching the game again with my dad, typically on Sunday nights, and I feel like Green Bay, it's all about first down offense with them. Like, if they can get a successful play on first down, they're going to be successful. So I just kind of made that comment. I want to say it was like late second quarter. I was like, if you can slow them down on first down, you can stop the Packers. But if you can't slow them down on first down, you can't slow down the Packers. So that means you have to be able to tackle the screen game. You have to be able to stop the run. And those two things, combined with Jordan Love's delivery on those screens, combined with the athleticism of some of these players, combined with the play design of Matt LaFleur, is incredibly hard, and the offensive line of the Packers, incredibly hard to slow down. The Packers did whatever they wanted on the ground in the first half. Like, whatever they wanted. Jacobs ended the game 26 for 94, 3.6 yards per carry, a touchdown, and a fumble. He actually did have a pretty significant fumble in this game that could have turned the tide. It actually did turn the tide for a few minutes there in Seattle's favor. But again, this is another game where Josh Jacobs ended up with not a great yards per carry, but he was really good in the game. It's kind of hard to explain, but early in the game, he was very dynamic. And later in the game, Seattle slowed him down. They really couldn't get anything going beyond 2 yards an attempt, really, in the second half. And that's what slowed down the Packers' offense. And then, you know, Green Bay was still throwing those screens in the attempts of being good offensively. There was not a lot in terms of vertical passing game. It really came from Christian Watson, and there was a touchdown to Romeo Doubs at the very end. But there was very little in the vertical passing game from Green Bay beyond Christian Watson. Outside of that, like, Reed was very much, you know, jet touch passes, handoffs, reverses, quick throws. Kraft wasn't super involved other than like checkdowns across the middle or to the flat. You know, a lot of throws to the backs, a lot of screens from the Packers. And it was a lot of yak stuff and a lot of run game from Green Bay. They ended up with 229 total passing yards. And they were clearly the better team. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and most specifically, they had 7 sacks. So you combine the ability to run the ball with an ability to sack the quarterback and pressure the quarterback. And some of these came on Geno, and some of these came on Sam Howell. By the way, Sam Howell has to be the worst quarterback in football at managing a pocket and not taking a stupid sack. He is atrocious at taking sacks. In the first half, though, Geno was constantly pressured. I would say, though, like, when Seattle was able to block it up, he was finding often Jackson Smith and Jigba open. You know, they were able to move the ball down the field, but it felt like they rather stalled out, like, in field goal range, or Geno threw an interception in the end zone. There was a little bit of moving the ball for Seattle. And I do feel like this game could have been pretty interesting if Geno were in the game in the second half, because he's far better than Sam Howell. Any Seattle fan that thinks different is an idiot. I'm just going to say that right now. And big thing here, Seattle's pass rush, Seattle's blitzes did not get home on Jordan Love. They got 0 sacks. So Green Bay's offensive line was able to dictate the line of scrimmage early in the game, run the football. They were slamming the Seahawks with like split zone runs, I want to say, tight ends slamming across, guys like guards pulling. You've got like a lot of it felt like a lot of plays where Green Bay was in the gun and they would hand it to Jacobs and he would just slash through the defense. And only, six punts for Seattle, 4 punts for Green Bay. Fairly even in the penalty department, although Seattle significantly more in terms of yardage because of the pass interference spot fouls that they were able to draw. I remember one big one from Christian Watson, who was pretty involved in this game. He did hit his over on his receiving yards. At least I won that bet, okay? But, JSN, another game where he catches 10 passes for 83 yards, many of them on screens, quick throws over the middle. He didn't have too many explosives. He's been having some explosives over the past couple of weeks on crossers and things like that, but this game, not so much. I thought the Packers were extremely impressive early in the game, extremely dominant at the line of scrimmage offensively against a team that looked great on defense, great against the run, had been stifling James Conner and the Cardinals run game, which is an excellent run game. And the Packers went in there and they just ran all over Seattle, and Love was able to kind of do whatever he wanted off of the run game and the success of first down play calling and first down success, right? Like I said, and then the Packers kind of lost that first down success in the second half. The game got a bit tighter. Zach Charbonnet was decent when he was able to get the ball. He had 8 carries for 54 yards, but that's not enough. That's not enough touches. That's not enough carries in this game. They threw the ball way too much in this game, in my opinion. And maybe that was because they were down early, but it was only 14-0, right? It became 14-3 at one point. And it wasn't like they were totally out of it. You can still run the ball a little bit, especially with him running the ball as well as he did. Jordan Love was 20 for 27, 2 touchdowns. He did not throw a pick. And I cannot really recall a play where he was in jeopardy of throwing an interception. So he played a very clean game. And a lot of it was because of the play designs. A lot of the stuff was open. But he did make a couple nice throws down the field. Just enough, right? And I'm really confused by the Seahawks offense. I'm not a huge fan of Grubb, that hire this year. I haven't really seen anything that makes me think that he's an NFL offensive coordinator. A lot of the same plays repeating. Not a lot of understanding of using DK Metcalf. Like, DK Metcalf barely is ever targeted, barely ever utilized. He's extremely underutilized within the offense. He's fallen in love with throwing the ball to JSN or manufacturing touches for JSN and not DK Metcalf, which is a little odd. The run game was not there. The offensive line is awful. They do a terrible job picking up blitzes, stunts. Seattle's O-line is a catastrophe. I really hope they do not make the playoffs, because this is just in too bad of a shape to be able to get it done. And you talk about a team that even at home can't block anybody. I mean, when they go on the road, it's going to be an even bigger problem. Like, Seattle is terrible at home this year. They're 3-5 at home this season. And they've been blown out like more than 3 or 4 times. They've been embarrassed by teams. Like, I was at one of the games against the Niners on Thursday night, another primetime game at home where you'd expect to get the most out of your crowd and one of the loudest stadiums in football, and you get blown the F out. So Seattle did not live up to the hype in this game. They did not show enough improvement early in the game defensively. They got ran over, and they did make it a game at one point, but Sam Howell did not do enough at the quarterback position for them to be able to truly come back and make it a game. So Green Bay was always able to stay 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of the Seahawks. They looked like a far better team. 7 sacks thanks to their defensive line, their pass rush, and 140 rushing yards led by Josh Jacobs, 94 yards and a touchdown. That is Sunday Night Football. Not much else has to be said. We've talked about the Packers. They're a dark horse in the NFC. If this team is able to run the ball, if this team is able to create explosives through the passing game, they've got great dynamic yak threats. They can play in any place, any stadium, any weather. right? They can play in the snow, they can play in the cold, they can play in the rain, they can play in a dome, right? They're suitable for all types of games. So that makes them a very compelling wild card, a very compelling dark horse. If their defense plays this good moving forward, and I understand they were playing, a backup quarterback for a half, and I understand that they were playing an offensive line that's pretty bad, but they were able to take advantage of that and showcase their ability. They didn't have a couple players on defense. I thought huge contributors to this game were the linebackers of the Packers. Quay Walker early, more so Edgerrin Cooper a little bit later on. I thought that the D-line overall, like Devontae Wyatt stood out. A few guys, up front, Brooks, like their D-line is deep. I think their D-line is good. They really stood out to me. For the Seahawks offensively, I thought Charbonnet was decent, but not super explosive like Walker. I thought that JSN was pretty solid. Lockett and Metcalf continue to be very quiet. Defensively, I thought Leonard Williams played great in the second half, but the whole defense was relatively quiet in the second half. And Ernest Jones was solid, but not a lot to really be happy about if you're a Seahawks fan. Huge loss for you guys and a real setback because you felt like you were making strides and this game kind of punched you back down to earth. So pretty rough loss in my opinion. Let's get to the next game, which is one of the shockers of the day. I don't know what's kind of pulling me towards this game, but Tampa Bay and LA. This was a shocker. I nearly made the Chargers a best bet this week. And I honestly don't even understand this result. This was a game that I was watching on one of my second screens while commentating the Patriots game. So there were a lot of parts that I did watch and there were some parts that I did miss. But overall, 40-17 by Tampa Bay is almost dumbfounding. Like I don't understand how Los Angeles got absolutely dismantled when they have supposedly the better quarterback and they do have objectively the far better coach. And yet Todd Bowles' Bucs put up 24 first downs, which is not even far from the most impressive stat. You want to hear the more impressive stats. 9 for 15 on third down, 1 for 1 on fourth down. Make that 10 for 16 on third or fourth down. 223 rushing yards, 283 passing yards, 506 total yards, and 40 points with 36 minutes of possession. If you are not in the business of hiring Liam Cohen as a head coach, you are on crack cocaine, okay? If you do not hire Liam Cohen this offseason, some team in need of an offensive coach, in need of a head coach, this guy has been phenomenal this year, and this might have been his most impressive performance. The Chargers defense entering this game, keep in mind, at home in this game, mostly healthy in this game, Chargers defense was first in points allowed. First. Baker Mayfield had 4 touchdowns through 5 incompletions and had 288 yards. Bucky Irving on 15 carries had 117 yards. Mike Evans, once again chasing 1,000 yards, had 9 catches on 11 targets for 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. One of them coming on an absolute beautiful play by Baker scrambling on a scramble drill, finding Evans down the left sideline for a touchdown. The other one was another deep ball across the middle. I want to say it was like a deep post for a 35-yard touchdown. Evans had 2 ginormous touchdowns, one over 50 and one over 30, both deep balls. And this was even crazier when you consider that the Chargers led at halftime. The score was 17-13 at halftime. This was not a blowout from the beginning. The Bucs beat the Chargers 27-0 in the second half. 27-0 in the second half. This game was dumbfounding. Couple explosives to Mike Evans, some great running of the football from Bucky Irving, and Baker doing the rest. And Baker doing a great job of escaping sacks, of keeping plays alive, of scrambling for first downs. Right? The Chargers only had one sack. Great. Bucs O-line is the most underrated O-line in football, in my opinion. I think it's a top 5 O-line in football. 3 sacks for the Bucs in this game. Just enough pressure on Herbert to make him a little bit uncomfortable. Herbert, again, does not have a great game here. After last week against the Chiefs, not having a great game. 21 for 33, 195, 2 touchdowns and an interception for Herbert. Herbert struggled, I felt like, to, deal with the rush and then be able to find a guy that was open after like his first read. It felt like guys were not open early in the down, and he was having to scramble around and buy time and try to make a throw that wasn't there very much a lot of the time, okay? The run game for the Chargers was once again absolutely non-existent, and this team feels like a team that will make the playoffs in, very likely. They're 8-6. They're very likely to make the playoffs. They would have to completely fall off. Now, that being said, who do they play? I think that's a good question to ask, because the way they played today and the way they've played the last few weeks, they got dismantled by Baltimore. They beat Atlanta, but they should have lost, okay? They won 17-13. Cousins threw 4 picks, and one of them was a pick 6. They should have lost that game. They lost to the Chiefs, although they could have won that game. They lost to the Bucs by 100, okay? That being said, they played Denver. Right now, Denver looks like the better team. That game's at home. That's a divisional game. It's a primetime game. We'll see what happens there. They play in New England in potentially a very cold game against a West Coast team. And the Chargers are better than the Patriots, but I wouldn't be shocked if that was a close game. And then they play the Raiders in Las Vegas. That you never know. That's a divisional game. And Aiden O'Connell looks like he might be healthy, and the Raiders are a much better team with Aiden O'Connell. But it does appear that based on that schedule, they should at least go 2-1. I'm just saying, if they do finish 8-9 or 9-8, I wouldn't be shocked. The way that they played today. On top of that, right, like, this team, if they make the playoffs, my main intent here is that they're the worst team in the AFC playoffs. I think in terms of being a threat, because they have no run game. Their run defense was awful today. Their pass defense was awful today, which is shocking. Their pass rush was non-existent, and it's just crazy. I mean, they were 0 for 6 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. They had 200 yards against the Bucs. The Bucs did not have Antoine Winfield in this game. They were missing 2 starting safeties. Jordan Whitehead's out for the year, and this is another game where I thought the Chargers would win, man. I was wrong. I was totally wrong, and I hate being wrong when I fade a team that I really like. I think a lot of you guys know I like the Bucs a lot, and I've been Baker's biggest fan all year, other than Ben. But, I mean, Baker's my guy this year. Like, Baker has played just as well, if not better, than Herbert all year. And I don't think people have recognized that. Hopefully they do now. I mean, this guy's a legitimate MVP. He's in the MVP conversation. He's like a top 5 quarterback in the league right now, top 5 or 6. Another outstanding performance from him. 22 for 27, 288, 4-1. 135 passer rating. Mike Evans, superb. McMillan, fantastic game. I thought he looked great. Not as much Cade Otton off the top of my head. But, man, I thought McMillan and Evans, between those two, great stuff. Bucky Irving, great stuff. Defensively, the Bucs flying around, blitzing, doing their usual thing, but it just felt like they played way better for some reason. Maybe the lack of a run game or threat at all was what propelled them, but their third down defense was fucking phenomenal. 0% for Justin Herbert on third down or fourth down is unbelievable stuff. And I think we got to look at this Bucs team and say, if their defense can just improve a little bit and they can get Antoine Winfield back, which they will, I mean, this is a team at the end of the day. They're 8-6. They're going to win this division, right? You look at who they play for the rest of the year. I think they've got the Panthers again, which was a tough game for them the first time. They play the Saints, who look, they somehow look decent last week, or this week, I should say, but they have a backup quarterback. And the Cowboys, who they kind of own. So you've got the Bucs here. They might finish 11-6. The Bucs might finish 11-6. They might be the 3 seed, and they would play the Packers or the Vikings in the wild card at home. That being said, this is a team that beat the Eagles and the Lions this year. And they just destroyed the Chargers. Destroyed them. Completely wrecked them. Like, this box score is outrageous. Okay? And penalties were even. So, I'm very disappointed in the Chargers. Disappointed in Herbert. Very disappointed in Jim Harbaugh. Everybody's got to slow down on the hype. Because, I mean, when you really look at this Chargers team, they have beaten a lot of bums, all right? Like, this guy has been making his name and reputation off of a bunch of bums, all right? Like I said, they should have lost to Atlanta, all right? They've beaten Cincinnati in dramatic fashion, although they could have lost that game if McPherson learned how to kick, okay? They beat Tennessee, Cleveland with, I think, Jameis in that game, but still it's Cleveland. They have 3 wins. So they beat Tennessee, Cleveland, Cincinnati because McPherson can't kick, the Saints. Was Derek Carr playing in that game? I don't think so. Denver was their only good win. Las Vegas and Carolina were their first 2 wins. Guys, this team has lost to every decent team they've played. Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Arizona, other than Denver, who's a divisional opponent. Baltimore, Kansas City. Like, Atlanta's not even decent. Tampa. And Tampa was the worst loss of their season by, like, a substantial margin. This team has not lost by more than 10, like, all year. All year. Like, they lost to Pittsburgh 20-10 when Herbert got hurt and it was tied 10-10 at the end of the third. Other than that, the worst loss they had all year was probably Baltimore, 30-23, and that the score looked a little bit closer than the game was. Other than that, I mean, they have not lost anywhere close to this bad. So that was a shocking result to me. But I got to give a lot of love to the Bucs, and I'm sorry, Bucs. I'm sorry that I faded you, bro. I'm sorry, man. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos and Indianapolis Colts. Broncos won 31-13. But guys, that score is absolutely misleading because the score was 13-7 Colts at halftime. Yeah. So we just talked about how the Chargers were winning 17-13 at halftime. They lost 40-17. And now we're talking about the Broncos beating the Colts 31-13 when the Colts were beating the Broncos 13-6 at halftime. Now, one of the craziest plays I've seen all season happened in this game, and it was the play of the game. Okay, the score was 13-10. No, 17-13 Denver. And the Colts were driving. They were in Denver territory. They run a fake, like, okay, so how do I describe this? You know those plays where the quarterback throws it to the receiver on a screen, and then the receiver like tries to throw it back across the field? The Colts ran one of those plays where Mitchell got the ball on a screen and then he looked to throw the ball across the field. I've never seen this before. This looked like the Ramondre Stevenson, Jacoby Myers throwing it to Chandler Jones for a touchdown at the end of the Raiders-Patriots game 2 years ago. This is what this looked like. But it was way worse. Not way worse. It was probably just as even. But Nick Bonito, absolute stud. In my opinion, Pro Bowler, okay? Comes out of nowhere. I mean, absolutely nowhere. Mitchell throws the ball across the field to Richardson, expecting he's wide open. Bonito undercuts the ball, picks it off, and runs for a touchdown. Defensive end Nick Bonito. This guy is the MVP of this team. Nobody talks about Nick Bonito, bro. This guy's the MVP of the Broncos. He has over 10 sacks. He's got, like, interception. He must have 3 interceptions on the year. He has, like, multiple touchdowns. The guy is unbelievable. That was a crazy ass play. And then the Broncos scored another touchdown to end it with Cortland Sutton. So really, Denver's offense didn't do a lot. You know, they got 13 first downs in this game and 6 of them were converted on third down. Half of them were on third down. Their offense was not very good. they had 193 yards. Bo Nix had 121 passing yards, and they didn't even run the ball for 75 yards. So Denver won the game 31-13, 18-point win. And they had 120 less yards in the game. Wild. And of course, Mitch on Patreon gives out Denver to win the game by 1-13 win margin because it's plus 110. And of course we lose that because the Broncos somehow win by 18 despite having 193 yards. That being said, that's a bad break, I think. I don't know where you guys stand. The Broncos also punted more than the Colts. The Broncos also threw 3 interceptions. Bo Nix threw 3 interceptions in the game. Bo Nix was terrible in the game. Don't let anyone tell you different. He had 3 touchdowns. One of them was nice, the last one to Cortland Sutton. The others were kind of like whatever. I mean, they were all manufactured. All right, but Bo Nix, 20 for 33, 130 yards and 3 touchdowns and 3 picks. He was awful. Somehow they won by 18 points, and the Colts led by 6 at halftime. Jonathan Taylor had 100 yards in the game. They lost by 18 points. Anthony Richardson is atrocious. If you're still defending Anthony Richardson, you need to go to your doctor. You need to get your head examined. You need to get your vision checked. You are an idiot, sir. Anthony Richardson is awful. Do not let anyone tell you different. He ends this game once again with more incompletions than completions. 17 completions on 38 attempts. 172 yards, 2 picks. He does run for a touchdown. Good for you, buddy. You suck, okay? Kylan Granson, 3 catches for 47 yards, was basically their highlight receiver. Cortland Sutton had 3 catches on 9 targets for 32 yards and a touchdown. And basically all his production came on 1 play in the fourth quarter. The Colts were 4 for 15 on 3rd down. I wonder why, because their quarterback sucks. He can't complete a fucking pass. And then on 4th down, 2 for 4 on 4th down. So if you want to hear the brutal truth is that the Broncos won this game, not convincingly at all. Nick Bonito should be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Bo Nix is a jabroni, but still won the game. Anthony Richardson absolutely blows. 31-13 Broncos. Next game, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ha! Take that, Steeler fans. Wave your terrible towels. I got one right there. 27-13 Eagles. Dismantle the Pittsburgh defense. Ha! Take that, you jabronis. Pittsburgh had 10 first downs. 163 yards. Oh boy, they had 20 minutes of possession. Pittsburgh was dominated. And the craziest thing about this is that Pittsburgh should have been leading by multiple scores in the first quarter because the Eagles literally handed them multiple possessions. But yet, Pittsburgh only had 3 points until the end of the first half. They scored 10 points like within 2 minutes of the last 2 minutes of the half, and it actually looked like they reversed the momentum, and it looked like going into halftime, we're going to get a good game. It's tied 17-17, right? But nope, that's not what happened. We didn't, because the Eagles won the second half 10-0. This game was awfully odd, though, because, looking at the box score, the Eagles should have won this game by significantly more points. I mean, this is classic Pittsburgh, right? Like, this is classic Pittsburgh, to be fair. They got totally outplayed, totally outgained. They had 3 first downs on 3rd down. They had 10 first downs in general. Eagles had 26 first downs, which is 16 more than the Steelers. They were 10 for 17 on 3rd down, which is outrageous. They were 1 for 1 on 4th down. They had 80 more rushing yards. They had 160 more passing yards. They had 400 total yards, which is like 300 more than the other team. And they punted one time. Now, the Eagles did lose 2 fumbles, and that was why they didn't really capitalize early in the game. But, Najee Harris also had a fumble later in this game, which was huge. I think it was Najee who had the fumble later in the game. It was like a quick toss out wide, and Najee fumbled it. And they were driving. I want to say they were around the Eagles' like 35 or 40 yard line. And that was a huge play in the game. Steelers were trying to make it competitive and interesting. I still don't think they would have won, but still is a pretty big play. That being said, I look at this game and I say, Eagles, this is pretty much the game I kind of expected. Again, Eagles win by 14 here. I thought it would be within 10 points, somewhere in that range. I'm not shocked by this result whatsoever because, like you guys know, I'm not high on the Steelers at all. I think the Steelers are extremely flawed. I think their defense is kind of overrated. If you can block them, you can throw on them. And even a team that's as limited throwing the ball as the Eagles proved that in this game. 25 for 32, 290, and 2 touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. And with both of his receivers back, they both went over for 100 yards. Devontae Smith had over 100 and a touchdown, I think, and A.J. Brown had over 110 and a touchdown. Pittsburgh just got outpassed, and they couldn't run the ball at all. Like, the Eagles did not run the ball well, per se. Like, Saquon only had 3.4 yards per touch. But that being said, they were still able to kind of get enough for them to convert on third down. Or, like, them to run on third down. Or them to be in a manageable third down. And that's what it was about for the Eagles. Long, brutalizing drives, dictating the tempo, like controlling the game, controlling the clock, making the Steelers have to throw it from behind. And that's not where the Steelers want to be, right? And the Steelers, they've struggled running the ball. I think that's going to be their... As much as their passing game is really, really flawed, I feel like if this team could run the ball more consistently, which they really can't. They're like in the bottom 5 or 6 in yards per attempt on the ground. They're not a good running team. Like, they have their moments where they get explosive runs from Warren or whatever, but it feels like it's been weeks where Najee really was successful. He had 6 carries for 14 yards in this game. Some of the best runs by the Steelers were Russell Wilson scrambling. Right? Russ had 128 yards and a touchdown, and this team is not going to work if they can't control possession, if they can't run the ball, if they can't move forward running the ball. Like, this passing game is not complex enough. It's not talented enough. They don't have a good enough offensive line. They don't have good enough receivers, especially without George Pickens. They can't move the ball through the air against a above average defense at a consistent rate. Maybe against the worst of the league like we've been seeing, but not against this team. Not against this defense. Not against good defenses. So, Steelers just showcased all their flaws. The Eagles could block their defensive front for most of the game. There were a couple times where TJ Watt played really well, I thought. He had a really good game. They had 3 sacks, but it was few and far between. Like, Hurts overall, it's 25 for 32. He was very comfortable. He didn't throw an interception. He had 2 touchdowns. Like, Hurts played his best game he's played, like, all year from a passing perspective. And Smith and Brown both had great games. So that means the Steelers secondary did not do their job. And if you can block the Steelers, you can move it on the Steelers, right? You get slow but steady runs. And then on the other side, if you can rush the quarterback a little bit, stop the run, force them into second long, third and long, you're good. Like, they're not going to move the ball. So it's kind of the formula that I expected here. Again, I'm not high on the Steelers. I think they're a playoff team because of their record. I think that they deserve to be in that mix. Do I think that they're going to be a threat in the playoffs? I absolutely don't, because I just think they're too flawed. So, again, Eagles did their business. They were at home. They were favored by 5.5. They covered that, which is not easy to do against Mike Tomlin as an underdog, right? Tomlin's great on underdogs, but if you really look at this Pittsburgh team, man, like I've been saying, like, we could go through it. Like, they played, okay, so you go through their schedule. They played Atlanta with Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles. They win that game. First game of the year, Kirk Cousins in Atlanta off an Achilles. They win the game in a brutal fashion. I think it was 18-10. They beat the Broncos. Second game of Bo Nix's career. Broncos are a far different team now. They don't really know what their identity is. Nix looked awful early in the year if you watched him. He's a little bit better now, and their defense has kind of become what it's become, but 13-6 over Denver, who I think is kind of the same tier as Pittsburgh. They beat LA, the Chargers, when Herbert got hurt. The game was 10-10, and we've talked about the Chargers, how kind of fraudulent they are. They lost to the Colts. Those were all with Justin Fields, I will grant you that. They also lost to the Cowboys at home, which was a brutal loss on Sunday Night Football. They beat the Raiders. Okay. They beat the Jets, which we know is whatever. They beat the Giants. Okay, so the Jets, the Giants, the Raiders, the Browns, they lost to and they beat. Their best win of the year is the Commanders game, because we know they always beat the Ravens. So Steelers fans blow that out of proportion. We'll see how they play against the Ravens next week. I think that will be more of an indication because it's the second time they play, and it's closer to the playoffs. We'll see how that goes. It's also in Baltimore. I would expect Baltimore to win. That being said, it won't really change my opinion on the Steelers. It's going to keep them where I think they're at. Maybe by a couple spots I'll move them down or whatever, but it's not going to be a huge thing, right? Their best wins to me were the Cincinnati game where their offense looked awesome, but that was really because Cincinnati's defense is historically bad. And then the game against Washington. Those were my favorite wins of their season. Otherwise, they've had a lot of fraudulent victories. The Eagles, meanwhile, a lot of people are going to say they're the best team in the league. I think they're definitely in the top 3. And I would argue with all the Lions injuries that they have that I think you can make a strong argument they're the second best team in the league. We'll talk about who the best team in the league is a little bit later. But I feel like Philadelphia's defense is certainly one of the best. They have their moments where they look like the best. But again, the Eagles' best win by far was the Baltimore game where Justin Tucker looked like he couldn't kick a field goal. Okay. And otherwise, has the Eagles really played a tough schedule at all? No, they really haven't, right? They lost to Tampa Bay. They lost to Atlanta earlier in the year. They played Green Bay in Brazil, which I just throw out for both teams because it was a weird game. The turf was awful. It was the first game of the year. It was very odd. So I kind of just throw that out, honestly, for both teams. I don't really care about it. Not a win, not a loss. They won. It could have went either way. It was 34-29. Otherwise, who the hell have they beaten? Washington isn't good. I've talked about this. Baltimore, that's it. And then Pittsburgh, who isn't good either. So I go through this and I'm yeah, the Eagles look really awesome. And they're probably the second best team just based on, but I don't know, man. I'm not buying that they have looked I'm not buying that their resume suggests they're the best. And I'm not buying that because they beat the Steelers that they're the best team. So that's just kind of my opinion on both the game and kind of those two teams to give you kind of my perspective on that. But you guys can let me know in the comments because I know I'm going to hear, oh, you're a hater. And, just going through the schedule, yeah, they beat the Ravens. That's a good win. Steelers beat the Ravens too. Again, the Ravens lost to the Raiders. I think the Ravens are the sixth best team, somewhere in that range, but they're not that top 4, that top 5. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay, let's talk about the Ravens. 35-14 victory. And this is why I have the Ravens ahead of the Steelers, right? This is why I have the Ravens. They're 9-5 now. I think the Steelers are what? 10-4. Okay, I thought so. This is why I have the Ravens ahead of the Steelers. This is why I have the Ravens where I have them in my power rankings, 5-6 range. Because, first of all, they have Lamar Jackson. Okay, that's important. They have an elite quarterback. Second of all, they're 9-5, and they blow teams the fuck out. Okay, 35-14. This game was never competitive whatsoever. And it should have never been competitive, to be fair. They never lost a quarter in this game. On top of that, this game should have never been competitive because they were playing Tommy DeVito. And then for half of the game, they were playing Tim Boyle, who actually somehow was better than Tommy DeVito. But Tim Boyle does not belong in the NFL. That being said, Lamar Jackson had another 5-touchdown game that went right under the radar. Lamar has like 37 touchdowns and like 5 picks. So he's having a superb season. And if not for Josh Allen, he'd probably have his 3rd MVP. And if people were a little bit less bored with Lamar to a certain degree. But you look at what Baltimore's offense did today. 445 yards, 25 first downs, 9 for 11 on 3rd down. Just absolutely bonkers. 170 rushing yards. And they also had 12 penalties for 112 yards. And they still were able to win this game by 21 points. Okay? Defensively, I thought they played pretty well early. They played really well situationally. They were 2 for 12. The Giants were on 3rd down and 3 for 5 on 4th down. And, the first half was 21-7. So in the first half, they got a majority of the stops that they needed to get. And then, really, the Giants didn't score their second touchdown until the 4th quarter. But some big throws to Rashad Bateman, who had himself a nice game. 3 catches, 80 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Justice Hill was involved in this game as well. He had a 27-yard touchdown. Henry was actually kind of quiet in this game relative to expectations. Mark Andrews had some good plays. He had a touchdown in the game. And yeah, the Giants just couldn't really get anything going. Like, Neighbors put up like 10 catches for 80 yards or something, but a lot of it was in garbage time. Tracy didn't do much at all. And the Giants' O-line sucks. Kyle Van Noy continues to be an absolute animal. And yeah, Lamar. So not a lot to say here. Everyone thought this is what was going to happen. 35-14, the Ravens win and cover. And that should have been a bet for the BLV. It really should have been. But we did get that one right. I will say we did get that one right on Patreon. Okay. Now, a game that I thought would be a blowout, that did not end up being a blowout, that now has me despising this football team because they failed to cover the teaser of 1.5. The Washington Commanders beating the Saints 20-19. They're now 9-5, but they're the most fraudulent 9-5 football team in the NFL by a wide margin. The Washington Commanders are not a good team. They beat the New Orleans Saints, who have like no one. 21-20 was the score. 20-19, sorry. The Commanders were dominating this game. I do not know how this game was close. It was 17-0 in the 3rd quarter. And the Saints scored 13 or 12 unanswered. They scored 7 in the 3rd. Washington replied with a field goal. So you're like, okay, it's 20-7. Game over. You're going to cover easy. Nope. Saints score a touchdown on the final drive to make it actually really, really interesting. Because they got 2 field goals before that, and they got a touchdown, and they failed the 2-point to win the game. The Saints get that 2-point, they win the game. The game would be over. It's like no time left. Washington almost lost this game. And I will also say there was a very suspect delay of game that was not counted. And what I mean by that is the clock stopped. And I was watching the game live, and I was yelling at the TV because I'm like, I have the teaser with 1.5. The Saints completed a pass down to the 2-yard line with 9 seconds left, with like 12 seconds left. The clock's running. The clock magically stops with 9 seconds left in the game. And this is why I said I got bad breaks. The NFL later announced that this was a bad clock management play by whoever was in charge of the clock. The clock was stopped with 9 seconds left for about 3 seconds. It allowed the Saints to get a spike before the time went out. Because very likely, with the amount of time that was on the clock, the Saints shouldn't have been able to spike the ball. If they were able to, it should have came down right to the last second, and that probably would have been the last play. Instead, the clock stops magically with 9 seconds left. That delays it enough for Rattler to get the spike off and for them to score a touchdown and to ruin my bets. So not only do I hate the Commanders because they're phony, baloney, absolute fugazi pieces of donkey crap, but also at the same time, the Saints just absolutely, whoever was in charge of the clock, whoever ran this game, it should be fired because they just cost so many people so much money. It's not even funny. So that is ridiculous. Okay? That is ridiculous. That being said, I hate the Commanders. I don't know how they allowed this to happen. You're playing the New Orleans Saints, whose number one receiver is a former Raider third-string tight end, Foster Moreau, who are throwing to guys named Dante Pettis, who is a former bust of the San Francisco 49ers, who couldn't make his way onto the Bears receiving corps when they were down bad. This team is a piece of crap. I do not know how this game was. I don't know how this game was close. I barely watched this game. I assumed the game would be over. Jake Haener began the game 4 for 10 for 49 yards and an interception. He was sacked 3 times. Later in the game, Spencer Rattler comes in. He's 10 for 21, 135 and a touchdown. He actually played well, especially on that final drive. I got to give him credit. He did play well. But there are no excuses. Cedric Wilson threw a touchdown in this game. Like, Alvin Kamara had 12 yards and you almost lost. You almost lost to Dante Pettis and Valdez Scantling and a bunch of bums. Jaden Daniels put up good stats, but he got sacked 8 times. The Saints sacked Jaden Daniels 8 times in the game. 8. Not 5, not 6, not 7, 8 times in the game. Terry McLaurin had 2 touchdowns for my dad's fantasy team, so congratulations to him. But what a piece of crap. Cameron Jordan had 2 sacks. Chase Young, all of a sudden, revenge game, had 2 sacks. Are you kidding me? Like, I don't want to talk about it anymore, bro. Like, that is so disgusting. How do you let the Saints in the game? 8 sacks? Are you kidding me? You allowed 17 first downs to Spencer Rattler and Dante Pettis and Keandre Miller. Are you kidding me? They converted 3 third downs. How do you go 9 for 17 on third down, 23 first downs, 326 yards to 245, and you almost lose? How? You have 40 minutes of possession and you almost lose to the fucking Saints. How did this game even come down to the last possession? Saints fans, Commanders fans, please tell me in the chat. Like, from what I saw, I do not understand it. Like I said, I saw the beginning. I saw the touchdowns. I think one of the drives, too, the Saints got a bad penalty, and that kind of allowed the Commanders to score a touchdown, and it should have maybe been a field goal. Like, the Commanders suck. What happened in that game, man? Speaking about what happened, the Jets and the Jags, 32-25, the Jets take it over Jacksonville. This game nobody cares about, so I don't really need to talk about it, but the Jets do beat the Jags 32-25, and what was a pretty exciting game with some great fantasy assets. Devontae Adams had a 9-catch, 198-yard performance for 2 touchdowns. Brian Thomas had 10 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns on my bench. Travis Etienne had 65 yards. Mac Jones actually had 31 completions in this game for 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, of course, 2 picks. Aaron Rodgers had 3 touchdowns and 269 yards. Jags had 27 first downs against the Jet defense, 421 yards. The Jets had 400 yards. I mean, pretty fun game, but yeah, Brian Thomas was unbelievable. Aaron Rodgers was good. Adams was good. Wilson scored in the game. Breece Hall, I'm surprised he even played. I don't really know why. The Jets defense continues to look a lot closer to the 2011 Patriots than the 2000 Ravens defense, in my opinion. But yeah, the Jets defense absolutely blows chunks. They let Mac Jones offense go for 421 yards. 2 interceptions thrown by Jacksonville. Kind of the difference. Both teams had a ton of penalties, as you would expect between two bad teams. But the Jets get a win, so good for them. A little too late. The Bengals beat the Titans, and they keep their playoff hopes alive. So if you guys have not been over it already, the Bengals are 6-8. They've won 2 games in a row. And as we know, they've lost about 7 games that they should have won. And they still have a chance to make the playoffs. The way that the Bengals would make the playoffs is if the Denver Broncos lose 3 straight games, which we'll see. But the Bengals have to beat the Browns, the Broncos, which is one of the games, and the Steelers. It's possible. It's possible. Is it likely? No, but it's possible, especially the way the Bengals continue to play offensively. They got a couple big plays from their defense in this game and allowed them to win 37-27. So when you look at just comparing, so if you want to know what happens with the Bengals, so the Broncos are 9-5. So the Broncos have to lose 3 straight games. Now, the thing is, one of the games is against the Bengals, and it's in Cincinnati. The other 2 games are at the Chargers and against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, the only way they would rest players in that game is if they win against the Texans and the Steelers in back-to-back weeks. Because the Bills are not going to lose to the Patriots and the Jets. They're not going to lose. So the Chiefs have to look over their shoulder, right? So it doesn't make a lot of sense for the Chiefs to be resting players there. So they probably have to win if they want the number 1 seed. All right? So that makes it more likely for the Bengals. But again, they have to beat the Broncos, which is going to be tough, and they also have to lose to the Chargers, who looked atrocious today. That being said, Denver also looked atrocious for like 90% of the game, but they still won by 18. Okay? That being said, this game, the Bengals also need, I think, Miami to lose one more time, which is very possible, and the Colts to lose one more time, which is very possible because they have Anthony Richardson. So the Bengals are still alive, but 37-27, they take it over Tennessee. Joe Burrow, once again, was very, very good. He did turn the ball over maybe a couple more times than you would have liked. He ended up with 2 interceptions. I think Jeff Simmons had one of the T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat had one of the interceptions. 37-27, the Bengals won. Both teams had a ton of first downs, as you would expect. Tennessee had 25, actually more than Cincinnati, who had 24. Now, the sad thing about the Bengals defense is the Titans had 25 first downs, and only 5 of them were on third down. So that means Tennessee had 20 first downs on first or second down, which is really bad defense. 374 yards for the Titans, which was actually more than the Bengals. But the Bengals were well ahead for a majority of the game. So this was not one of those games where the Bengals had to put up 500 yards to win. They were excellent on third down. Burrow was freaking unbelievable. 10 for a 13 on third down, like heaters. Higgins had a big game, 5 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown. Jamar Chase had his typical Jamar Chase game. He was very good. Chase Brown had a very good game. 25 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown. He also caught the ball a couple times. Tyler Boyd attempted a revenge game, but not so much. Tony Pollard did score a touchdown, but didn't have a lot of success on the ground. Calvin Ridley was relatively quiet. Josh Wiley had 5 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown. Tajay Spears also had a touchdown. And Sam Hubbard scored a touchdown in this game. Geno Stone got a pick 6 on Will Levis that ended up making him go to the bench, pulling him for Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph, I hope, starts next week. Mason Rudolph has been better than Will Levis when I've seen them play. I just think he functions the offense a bit better. Both teams only took 1 sack each. 4 interceptions thrown by the Titans collectively on offense. 1 of them by Rudolph, 3 of them by Levis that ultimately got him benched. That's what I'm talking about with big plays by the Bengals. And this ref crew was absolutely outrageously bad. They had like 26 penalties in this game, 14 for Cincinnati, 12 for Tennessee. Both teams had around 110 yards in penalties. A bunch of them were bogus pass interference calls, holdings, illegal formations, false starts. So many stupid penalties. Both teams had 2 fumbles, and I mean, just a lot of penalties, a lot of stupid shit, a lot of stuff, a lot of explosive plays, especially by Cincinnati. Joe Burrow just balling out behind this offensive line, juking, jiving, and throwing and making plays everywhere. But Burrow was unbelievable, man. So 37-27, Bengals are still in the playoff race, and they get a pretty convincing win for the first time, and it feels like a minute against, at least it's a bad team. Like, this game was 37-20, and the Titans scored a touchdown at the very end. So it was actually more of a 17-point win at the end of the day. Next up, we have the Dallas Cowboys and the Carolina Panthers, which I won't talk too much about because I really didn't see a lot of this game. I saw early portions of it, but not too much later in the game. Dallas obliterated Carolina. This was wild. I actually thought Carolina was probably going to win, and Dallas won convincingly. Now, I'm not shocked Dallas won. I'm shocked that they won 30-14. They, of course, had way more first downs, way more efficient on third down. They had 410 yards, 211 rushing yards. Rico Dowdle had 149 rushing yards in this game. Cooper Rush looked like Troy Aikman, 18 for 29, 3 tutties, 214 on the day. Dallas also sacked Bryce Young 6 times. Bryce Young looked like Bryce Young. He looked terrible. He was 19 for 28. He threw 2 awful picks, and he had 219 yards. He was still trying to show that elusiveness and the ability to create, but a lot more of it went bad than it went good. It was a bad game for Bryce Young. He did not play well. And defensively, they couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't get pressure. It was really bad. They only forced two punts, 14 penalties on Dallas, and still they blew them out by 16, and it wasn't really that close. CeeDee Lamb had a great game, especially in the first half. 9 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. It's rather the first half or the third quarter. I can't recall. But he had 1 drive just by himself where he caught 3 consecutive plays, and then they scored a touchdown. He was very good. Jalen Coker, the rookie, was a little bit of a bright side for Carolina. 4 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. But bad game for Hubbard, surprisingly. 10 carries for 32 yards. Dallas's defense has been better, They didn't look their best against the Bengals, but again, that's the Bengals. Great offense. Really, really great offense. But otherwise, they've looked a lot better defensively. They look a lot better as a team. They're running the ball. They're protecting better. Mike McCarthy deserves a lot of credit. He really does. I mean, I know Cowboys fans want him out, but man, this guy's coaching his ass off. I'm not going to lie. You look at the Cowboys lately, 30-14 over Carolina, a team that's been surging. They're at home. They've been playing good football. They've been competing against the Chiefs. They've been competing against the Bucs. They're competing against everybody, right? And Dallas, they lose a tough game against Cincinnati. Everyone thinks, they're going to have a downer the week after. This team, Dallas, man, they've won 3 out of 4, and their only loss was against Cincinnati on a onside punt. I mean, they beat Washington. They beat the Giants on Thanksgiving pretty convincingly. And, since those Eagles and Texans losses, they've been pretty good. Now they play Tampa. They finished their season out rough. They'll probably finish 6-11, but they play Tampa, they play the Eagles, and they play the Commanders. So it's not going to be easy. But if they could beat the Commanders again, I wouldn't be shocked. The way the Commanders are playing, I wouldn't be shocked at all. That game's in Dallas, too. So we'll see. Chiefs and Browns. 21-7, Chiefs take it over the Browns. This was bounce back for the Chiefs defense, I would call it. Definitely a really strong performance from their defense. Their pass rush was really awesome. They had 5 sacks, according to the stats. It felt like maybe more. I was going to say like 7. They had a lot of pressure on Jameis. Jameis had an awful day. He threw 3 picks, 2 of them in the end zone. That being said, as somebody that was backing the Browns, not only with 4, but also a teaser of 10, they should have covered this game like 8 different times. Like, they turned it over 6 times in the game. The very first touchdown was a punt muff by the Browns that ended up in a touchdown for the Chiefs. That's how this game went, man. It was. The Chiefs' offense was decent throughout the day, but a lot of it was the Browns just continuously gave them opportunities, continuously turned it over. And I thought their defense, the Chiefs, forced many of those turnovers, but a lot of it was the Browns just being the Browns. Like, it's just the Browns, bro. They just turn it over all the time, and they're just very, 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 very sloppy. They had only 6 penalties, but 6 turnovers to match. They were bad on third down. This team continues to struggle on third down. 4 for 12 on third, 0 for 1 on fourth. They nearly had the same amount of first downs. Like, Chiefs had 18, Browns had 16. The Browns, like, this game should have been 21-14 or something. Like, there's no way. Like, there was so many times they would drive down and then they would just make a mistake, or they would give the Chiefs the ball, good field position. I thought the Browns defense, again, played mostly admirably here. Like, Mahomes had 159 yards. He threw nearly 20 incompletions. He did have some amazing plays. There were multiple plays where he was under pressure and he completed passes under duress, stepping up in the pocket, getting hit, throwing the ball, somehow making a play. A couple to Hopkins, to Kelsey. Worthy had a lot of action. They were trying to find him deep. It didn't really work out, but 6 for 46, a lot of manufactured touches, trying to find Watson down the field, wasn't really there, but Hopkins moving the chains, Worthy doing his Kadarius Toney impression, Kelsey moving the chains. A little bit better of a run game, especially early on, than I would have expected from the Chiefs. Hunt and Pacheco in on the work. Hunt had 13 carries in this game. 7 for 18 for the Chiefs on third down, which is a lot less than usual. And actually, I think the Chiefs had like 4 consecutive 3-and-outs to start this game besides the touchdown drive. So yeah, it was not like they punted 9 times, Kansas City. The reason this game wasn't competitive was because because the Browns just gave them the ball 6 times. Like, that's the only reason, honestly. Jerome Ford, I don't know why he's not the starting running back. Like, Nick Chubb's awful. He's washed. He also got hurt in the game. Ford had 84 yards on 7 carries. So I'm intrigued by the Texans game coming up next week, which I'm going to talk about the Texans next. That's going to be a really good game because I thought the Chiefs, their defense played a lot better, but I felt like overall they still looked like the same team. It was just that the Browns just browned it up, and Jameis had his worst game by far that I've seen him play this season. It was real rough. It was worse than the Chargers game, worse than the Steelers game by far. Really rough game. Jerry Jeudy still, again, played phenomenal. 11 catches for 108 yards. He deserves a shout out. Yeah. This was actually a pretty good Mahomes game despite his stat line. He did get hurt and high ankle sprain is what they're calling it. We'll see. I've seen this guy get hurt before and be totally fine, so we'll see. He's the new Ben Roethlisberger when it comes to injuries. I'm not saying he's hurt until he's hurt because I just don't believe it, honestly. Carson Wentz came in for mop-up duty. 20-12, the Texans beat the Dolphins. They play the Chiefs next week. They're 9-5. Texans won. I think this was a really impressive game for their defense. This was one of the toughest tests they've had all season, the Miami Dolphins offense. Dolphins on a heater lately. They hold Miami to 224 total yards, 52 rushing yards, 4 for 13 on third down, and only 224 yards. They sacked them 3 times. They forced 3 picks of Tua. They forced only 3 punts because of 3 picks, and then also a fumble, I think, in there as well. So the Texans defense, their pass rush was all over Tua. Stingley was phenomenal. He was super sticky on Tyreek. He had a terrible day. Waddle got hurt in this game. He got kind of like messed up on a run play where he was trying to block and he got hit from behind on the back of his legs. Jonnu had some key conversions for a touchdown on fourth down and then a fourth down conversion, but he was very limited in terms of yards per reception. 9 catches, 48 yards, which was his worst game in a while. Besides, and Miami's whole offense in this game was quick throws, like quick screens, like plays behind the line of scrimmage. And I think that's why Miami was so unsuccessful. Christian Harris returned to the lineup for Houston. He was all over the field. He was a missile. And I thought the Texans' overall tackling was superb out of the bye week. They did a great job against Miami, limiting a lot of yards after catch. I can only imagine what it would look like if they had Jalen Petrie and Al-Shaair, because they had neither of these guys. And their tackling was still absolutely unbelievable. So, yeah. Texans also converted a fake punt to Ogunbowale, which was pretty fun. Nico Collins had a rare stat line of 4 catches for 17 yards and 2 touchdowns. CJ Stroud also, I thought, played actually mostly really well. 18 for 26, but he statistically didn't play well. 18 for 26, 131 and 2 touchdowns. I just thought he made a number of really nice throws. Kind of like Mahomes. Very much like Mahomes, in my opinion. Both dealing with very similar situations where they were under a lot of duress, but they made a lot of plays kind of, under that duress. You know what I mean? So that's going to be big against the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs pass rush, it's not very good. So we'll see, but they do have Chris Jones, who's going to cause issues because they can't block the interior right now. The Texans' O-line is shit, but Joe Mixon was also quiet. I was impressed with Miami's run defense overall, very good. Tua had a terrible game. He was really bad. Besides a couple of nice scramble drill throws and stuff like that, like the one to Jonnu for a touchdown. He had an awful game. He threw a number of interceptions. He forced a number of passes. The Texans, though, defensively are awesome. They have one of the 3 best defenses in the league. You look at their stats before this week, and the Texans, they allowed 12 points. You look at their stats this year, and they've played the Lions, they've played the Bills, they've played some competition, right? They are first in time of possession allowed, first in yards allowed per drive, and second in plays allowed per drive. They're also second in first downs allowed, and second in net yards attempt allowed. So they're top 3 in a lot of defensive stats. So they're an excellent defense. Their pass rush is really, really good. But their offense continues to struggle. But they won by 8, which is a pretty decent margin against Miami. So, yeah, good win for the Texans in a game where Miami has to win. Miami has to win to make the playoffs, and now they're 6-8. They got the same record as the Bengals. So, the Dolphins are probably not going to make the playoffs. They play the Niners, which we'll see. That should be a coin flip. Then they play at Cleveland, which that's going to be tough weather for Tua. And then they finish at the Jets. So none of those games is going to be easy considering they almost lost the Jets last week. But we'll see, right? So those are all the games except for 2. The New England Patriots and the Arizona Cardinals before we finish off with the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions, the game of the week, arguably the game of the year. I don't think I've missed any other game, and this has been a long one, I want to say. Not too long. I go pretty long. Gronk, spike the like button, guys, if you haven't already, and subscribe, man. I hope you're enjoying this. Let me know in the chat. Just say Brady in the comments if you've been listening this long. Cardinals take it over my Patriots 30-17. This score was pretty misleading. This game should have been a lot closer than it was. We'll talk about why, okay? So the Cardinals did take a 10-0 lead off a Jonah Williams fumble recovery in the end zone for a touchdown, where Greg Dortch got the ball punched out from behind, clear fumble, the ball bounces into the end zone, and the Cardinals recover it for a touchdown. That made the game 10-0 for the Cardinals. Meanwhile, the first drive of the game was had by the Patriots. They drove down the field, and they missed a field goal. Now, on that drive, we move the ball all the way down there, and then we just start having the dumbest play calls known to humankind. We attempt a 50-yard field goal and we miss, okay? Is what it is, but horrible play calling. That starts the day off great from the coaching staff. All right, some weird screens, like weird play call. We're not trusting Drake to throw the ball, even though he started this game 10 for 10. Okay, I don't understand it. But 10-0 for the Cardinals. It should have been 10-3 right there. All right, and it could have been 3-3 if we would have recovered the fumble, or the ball would have ran or would have went out of bounds, because the ball was recovered right at the pylon. Right at the pylon. Okay, so he was almost out of bounds. So the ball almost went directly through the end zone for a touchback. So the game could have easily been 3-3. Instead, it's 10-0. All right? Then the Patriots respond with a field goal. It's 10-3. Good drive from the Patriots. They actually ran the ball well. I thought mostly, they had a couple drives early where they, especially in the first, second quarter, where they kind of were a little slow. But second half, they moved the ball. Early in the game, they moved the ball, and a lot of it had to do with the defense. A lot of it had to do with play calling. Like, Drake played really well. He only threw 4 incompletions. He was 19 for 23. He had 202 yards and a touchdown, and the interception he threw was the biggest joke I've ever seen. We'll get to that a little later on. Now, the guy that kicked 3 field goals for the Cardinals is a kicker that we cut last year, Chad Ryland, or cut in the offseason, I don't even know. But he enabled us to get Drake May, to be fair, because he was so bad. But the reason the Cardinals won is because they could run the ball. James Conner had a great game. 16 carries, 110 yards, 6.9 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. And he was a workhorse. Like, they gave the ball a few times to other guys, but nothing too substantial from anyone else. James Conner was the guy. Okay, 2 touchdowns, 1 later on in the game, 1 to start the fourth quarter to kind of put the game out of reach. Trey McBride was the third down chain mover, 9 catches for 87 yards. Marvin Harrison was locked up largely by Christian Gonzalez, who played very well. Another play in this game, which there's like 3 plays in this game you won't even believe. So there's 4 plays that would have made this game perhaps like an overtime type of game. First, the Patriots missing a field goal in a drive where it was just stupid play calling by the coach. Second, a fumble recovery in the end zone that could have easily went out of bounds. Like, the guy was like this close to being out of bounds. 3, the Patriots had an interception inside the 20-yard line of the Cardinals that was called back for a high hit or roughing the passer on Kyler Murray. That was not a high hit. It was like Kyler was like stepping up in the pocket and he got hit like right here, and he's 5'2", so it looked like it was a high hit, but it was extremely debatable. There was also a third down that was converted via Kyler Murray getting horse collared. There was also before that interception that should have stood for Christian Gonzalez, who got the interception. It would have given the ball to the Patriots inside the 20-yard line. And that was when the game was very close. And before that, the Patriots had a 4th and 1 at the 4 of the Cardinals, and they ran the ball straight up the middle and got stuffed. So credit the Cardinals defense, but that was also an atrocious play call. So they had that play call. They had the play calling in the field goal. So Van Pelt had a really bad game, safe to say. They also had the interception that was returned. So they could have scored on the 4th down. They could have scored on the interception. There were so many times they could have scored. And then, the Cardinals kind of put the game away with their running game. But this was, first of all, you can't lose a game by 2 touchdowns when Drake throws 4 incompletions and plays really well. He had a touchdown, shovel pass touchdown. He had another rushing touchdown. He made some really nice throws. There was one to Kendrick Bourne, I want to say. It was a big throw down the field, really nice. The touch pass to Douglas was really nice. Man. And the interception he threw. He throws it right in the chest of Kayshon Boutte, who laterals the ball to the Cardinals for an interception. I'm not even joking you. That's what happened. He threw the ball in the chest of Kayshon Boutte around the 40-yard line of the Cardinals, And Kayshon Boutte grabbed he had it in his hands and he went like this, and it went to the Cardinals. Now, another main difference in this game, 10 for 15 on third down were the Cardinals. The Patriots have no pass rush. It does not exist. And the Patriots were 0 for 6. That being said, the Patriots did not face many third downs when they were on offense. Like, when they did, they didn't convert them. Henry played okay. Bourne played better. Boutte played like ass because of the interception. Douglas was kind of non-existent. What else? Stevenson played really well. Antonio Gibson played really well. The Patriots ran the ball well in this game. Both their running backs, I want to say, had over like 60 yards each. Patriots had 0 sacks on Kyler Murray. Patriots overall forced 0 turnovers because the interception did not stand. And the Cardinals only punted twice. Patriots defense continues to play like ass. So, not much else to say here. Gerard Mayo is an idiot. Alex Van Pelt is an idiot. The Patriots suck. Adrian Lowe single-handedly ended a Patriot drive, 2 consecutive plays. He was awful. Patriots suck. We suck again. 30-17 Cardinals, although the game should have been a lot closer, as I just explained. It was outrageous, some of those plays that happened in the game. Like, it's, wow. Okay. 48-42, the Buffalo Bills take it in the Super Bowl preview, as people were coining it. Superman in the Super Bowl preview goes super. All right. 48-42. Josh Allen had how many touchdowns in this game? He had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first quarter alone. And he had 2 passing touchdowns. Pretty good. Pretty good. He also had over 400 total yards. 362 passing yards. Now, I think a lot of people are going to have a different perspective of this game than me. I've already heard some of it from Durkant and Ultra. Now, that being said, both these teams had over 500 yards. These teams combined for over 1,000 yards and nearly 1,100 yards. The Bills had nearly 200 rushing yards against a defense that is very good against the run, which is extremely impressive. And I tweeted it during the game. The team that plays outdoors in Buffalo was more physical than the team that thinks they're physical that plays in a dome. Now, some of that could be injuries for Detroit, but they largely had a lot of people back. Okay? So, just saying, Detroit, to begin this game, had a lot of guys back in this game. That was a big deal from Lions fans. And that was a big deal by the media. The Bills, meanwhile, they did get Kincaid back, who was pretty key early in the game. Coleman made a huge catch in the game as well. They were back, but both their starting safeties were out. And Rasul Douglas, their starting corner, was out. So if any defense has excuses to begin the game, it's Buffalo. And Buffalo, to begin the game defensively, is the reason they won this game, in my opinion. We knew the Bills were going to score. Now, did I think they would score 48? I wasn't exact. You know, Josh Allen pretty much had another unbelievable performance where he was fucking unbelievable. Like, unbelievable is the only word. Like, he was unstoppable. He ran through the first, like, half of this game from Josh Allen was some of the best quarterbacking I've ever seen. Like, he was making throws where he's, like, running around and it's not even a play. And he's, like, on the sidelines throwing it across the field, like, dot for a 25-yard gain. Like, it doesn't matter who's playing defense. Like, you could put any defense, Steelers, the Texans, the Eagles, the 85 Bears, the 2003 Patriots. Bro, it doesn't matter. Like, this guy was going nuts. Like, it doesn't, like, when he plays like this, like, when he's in that Patriot wild card mode, when he's in that Chiefs divisional round mode, 13-second game, when he's in last week's mode, this week's mode, like, there's just those performances from Josh when he plays at his peak. There's just, like, he's just unbelievable. Like, he's truly one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history when he plays this way. Like, it's just insane. Okay, and it's unlike any force of nature that we have in the NFL right now. It's just, you can't stop it. Like, the line, it doesn't matter what the Lions do. They could play man, they could play zone, they could blitz, they could rush 4, they could rush 3, they could rush 2, they could rush 1, they could send 8. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. They're not going to stop them, okay? And then you couple that with the run game the Bills had in this game. James Cook was unbelievable. 14 carries, 105 yards, 7.5 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. Ty Johnson was catching the ball down the field. He was making plays. Davis was making plays. Everybody was making plays. Kincaid, Knox made superb catches. Shakir made plays, 6 catches, 39 yards, a touchdown. Coleman made a big catch. Hollins made a big catch. Everybody, bro. I think except for like Cooper, really. I don't really remember Cooper getting that involved in this game, but everyone else, especially the running backs, dude. The running backs were torching the Lions. Oh my goodness. Ty Johnson, Davis, Cook, they were getting down the field. And then Allen himself, I mean, they could not stop him running the ball at all. Fourth quarter, first quarter, didn't matter. He was running all over them. Design runs, scrambles, like, Bills' offense was unbelievable. Great called game, great played game by Josh. Josh was ridiculous. Like, ridiculous. Lions fans, don't feel bad about your defense, that bad about your defense. Worry about the injuries, but man, like, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about that. Honestly, like, I don't think there's anything you can do. Now, that being said, the reason the Bills won this game is their defense in the first half was really good, okay? So the Bills' defense did get shit on in the second half. There's no debate, okay? They allowed 28 points in the second half. 28. 14 in the first half in the second quarter. But there were 5 possessions, right, by the Lions, I think, in the first half. And 3 of them did not go for any points. 3 of them did not go for any points. The Lions have overall the best offense in the league. The Lions at home, it's hard to keep them under 30. It's hard to keep them under 30. It really is. And especially in a game where the other team is scoring at will, it's really hard to keep the Lions off the board because they're going for it on every 4th down and they're playing that aggressively. And I thought that in the first half when the Bills needed to be really good defensively, they were really good. At the end of the half, when the Bills missed a 20-yard field goal or whatever it was, and the Lions had an opportunity to drive down the field, they stopped them. Early in the game, 3 and out by the Lions. Second possession by the Lions, didn't get any points. Couple sacks in a row, consecutively. Benford on a blitz. And then I think it was Ed Oliver or Greg Rousseau on a sack. They got to Goff early in this game. And they stopped the run in this game. The Bills did not allow the Lions to run the ball that well in this game. Gibbs was the most efficient ball carrier, 3.9 yards per carry. It was all about Goff in the second half. 38 for 59, 494 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is outrageous. Amon-Ra had 14 for 193 and a touchdown. I give the Lions a lot of credit for what they did in the second half offensively. They were slicing, dicing, and absolutely killing the Bills down the field. St. Brown, Tim Patrick, Gibbs on screens, Montgomery on dump-offs, Skipper scored a touchdown, offensive lineman, fat guys getting the end zone. Jameson scored the last touchdown, but he was kind of quiet, I thought. At least I recall him being pretty quiet. But yeah, I thought the main difference was Buffalo jumped ahead. Buffalo's defense played better early. Josh Allen was just unbelievable. And that was basically the game. Like, the Lions were trailing the entire game. The entire game. They could never make up space. They could never make up ground. The Bills punted once in the game. The Lions punted 3 times. That was ultimately the story because the Bills did not turn it over. The Lions did not turn it over. Neither team took a lot of penalties. Maybe the Lions fumbled once. I'm not sure. But yeah, this was the story of Josh Allen, bro. Bills got 3 sacks early in the game, and then the Lions started to figure it out. But I give credit to the Bills after how they started last week compared to how they started this week, especially defensively. Different world, different game, different energy. They came out and they were ready, and they went after the Lions, and they dominated. I think at one point in this game, it was 35-14 or something like that. Let me see. 35-14 in the third quarter. When it gets to 35-14, whatever happens after that, I know it's the Lions, but that's garbage time. Like, the Lions scored 21 points in the fourth quarter. Like, if you're really going to put all that on the Bills when they're playing soft zone and prevent, like, you're going to put that on the Bills, right? That's garbage time to me. But 35-14 is a commanding lead against arguably the best team in the NFC and in the NFL that a lot of people thought. So, Lions got injury issues to deal with. I think Carlton Davis got hurt. McNeil got hurt. They're going to have to look at that. But Bills are, in my opinion, best team in football. And when they couple a good start from their defense and a couple opportunistic wins through their pass rush and their secondary, they're going to get healthier. With Josh Allen playing the way that he's playing right now, he's the clear most valuable player in the NFL. He's the clear best quarterback in the NFL, as we've been saying for 2 years. They're going to win the Super Bowl if they play like that. Because this team is capable of scoring 40 on any team in the league. I do not care. If Josh Allen is playing like that, it doesn't matter. And that being said, there are not a lot of teams like the Lions that are going to put up 40 on the Bills. A lot of people misconstrue this because they've had 2 bad defensive games statistically in a row. But the Rams, at their best, are basically the same. They're like the Lions. I think they have a worse O-line. They have a very similar running game. They actually ran the ball better than the Lions did today. They have better receivers, in my opinion, and they have a better quarterback. But they both are very similar offenses. The Lions have a better overall offense because I think they've got more flexibility, versatility. They're more powerful. They've got a better run game. They've got a better O-line. So that makes them overall better. But Stafford's ability when he's hot with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and McVay, that is as hard of an offense to stop as well in football. So this is just 2 unique matchups that give them a lot of issues. And if they see them in the Super Bowl again, it's going to be a high-scoring game. It is, right? But the difference in this one, why I picked the Bills, why I bet the Bills, and why I feel like the Bills would win again is because Josh Allen versus Jared Goff. Like, Goff is good. There's no question. But he's not Josh Allen. And that's the difference, okay? And that's why I'd pick them in the Super Bowl. And, you know, the Eagles are that other team that people would be like, oh, they'd beat the Bills because of their defense. I don't care. The Bills are still scoring 30 on the Eagles. I do not care. Now, that being said, what would that Eagles-Bills matchup be like? I don't think the Eagles offense is anywhere near the Lions offense, anywhere near a healthy Rams offense. I don't think it is. I think this game against the Steelers was probably one of their better offensive performances because they had to throw the ball. But I think because of the simplicity of their offense, that given a 2-week preparation time, I think the Bills would have full advantage on that. So, yeah, I think the Bills are the best team in the league. And if I had to pick the winner of the Super Bowl, I'd pick them right now. The Chiefs, I think, are the team in the AFC that have the best chance of beating Buffalo because they've done it before, and because if their defense plays like it did today and their offense can just get a little bit better, they're going to hang in those games, and it's going to be a close game. But the rest of the AFC, man, like, we've got to see more from Baltimore. Baltimore matches up well with Buffalo, but their defense is flawed. The Steelers, I don't think, are a threat. The Texans are a little bit too flawed for my liking, although I really like their defense. And they did beat Buffalo. The Chargers are fugazi. The Broncos are fugazi. So that's my opinion. Let me know in the chat. That's week 15. It's Mitch. Gronk spiked the like. Peace.